Why did Walking Tall fall flat? Why did The Rundown get the runaround? And how did Dwayne Johnson save not just his career, but the entire Fast and Furious franchise? Keep watching to find out. You couldn't ask for a more high-profile movie star debut than when Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson snagged the villain role in mega sequel The Mummy Returns. Despite only being in a small part of the movie, Johnson was a huge part of The Mummy Returns marketing, leading to a $68 million opening and a $435 global haul. Johnson snagged $5.5 million for the prequel The Scorpion King. Beer and pizza money to him today, but at the time, the highest salary ever for a first-time leading man. Johnson proved he was worth the investment, with the movie bringing in $165 million worldwide. Then, The Rundown happened. Whoops. Honestly, The Rundown is a really solid action movie with a 69% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes. However, by 2003, one-man army action movies were being replaced by superheroes. The movie managed to pull in $80 million worldwide, but with an $85 million price tag, the underperformance of The Rundown nearly sent The Rock scrambling right back to the wrestling ring. Fast and Furious Presents Hobbs Shaw may have caused a rift with the family, but it did pretty well for Johnson's bank account, and for Universal Pictures, which bankrolled it. This spin-off from the Fast and Furious franchise was one of the few bright spots of the dismal summer box office of 2019. While it certainly helps being part of a Fast and Furious franchise that has racked up $6.5 billion worldwide, Johnson's global popularity played a huge part in the success of Hobbs Shaw. All due respect to Tyrese Gibson and Chris Ludacris Bridges, but it seems unlikely a Perch and Parker film would do nearly as well. So how well did Hobbs Shaw do? With a mammoth $200 million budget, $20 million of which reportedly went to Johnson's wallet, Hobbs Shaw made $173 million domestically and $760 million worldwide. 2005 was a time of transition for Johnson. The lukewarm box office response to action picks like The Rundown stalled his efforts at becoming the next Arnold Schwarzenegger. However, he hadn't yet launched his dreadful macho guy in a kids movie phase, exemplified by films like Race to Witch Mountain. In this muck was the appropriately titled Doom. Appropriately titled because that's exactly what this movie met critically and commercially. Doom. With an 18% critic score and 34% audience score, the video game adaptation failed to transition from the console to the big screen. With a $70 million budget, Doom finished its run earning $28 million domestically and $58 million worldwide. Add in marketing costs, and it's estimated the film likely lost around $82 million. Johnson was only a co-lead opposite Karl Urban, but his name and face were plastered all over the promotional materials, so whether he was in it for a few minutes or the whole runtime, people who went to see it did so because of him, so the failure was considered his.
I'm not supposed to die!
Dwayne Johnson's second appearance as Special Agent Luke Hobbs is one of the biggest hits on his resume. This was Fast and Furious 6, by the way, and if you have trouble remembering which Furious movie that was, it was the one where Hobbs hires Dominic and the family to take out a mercenary, whose second in command is Letty, in exchange for a full pardon. Not that the plot matters. Fast and Furious 6 earned a whopping $238 million domestically and $789 million worldwide. On a $160 million budget, it is estimated to have made a profit around $469 million. You could be forgiven for thinking, so what? Johnson just latched onto a popular franchise. Actually, it was kind of the other way around. Johnson's first Furious movie, Fast 5, was already a huge 44% improvement over the Fast and Furious take of $359 million. Johnson helped the Furious franchise level up in a big way, leading to his nickname, Franchise Viagra. Dwayne Johnson may have starred in Walking Tall, but he certainly wasn't walking very tall at the box office. The Rundown had disappointed, with $80 million worldwide, so Johnson was looking for a rebound, and he did not get it. Walking Tall wasn't a course correction so much as an even bigger detour than The Rundown. Walking Tall got a dreadful 26% critic score and a barely fresh 60% audience score. Its box office was even worse, earning just $47 million worldwide. Johnson's series of bombs showed while audiences were all in on him being an added value to the already popular Mummy series, they didn't see him as a movie star. Yet. He was still the wrestler who acted. as evidenced by his continued billing as The Rock. But if he was going to walk tall for real, a change was clearly in order.
That was a hell of a homecoming party.
The Fast and Furious and Jumanji franchises are similarly unusual because they started as successful but not spectacular box office performers only to become major franchises later. So what's the common denominator? Dwayne Johnson. Johnson's impact on Jumanji might be more impressive than Fast and Furious, as Jumanji wasn't even a franchise before Johnson. It was a well-remembered Robin Williams star vehicle from 22 years earlier. Johnson turned it into a franchise with 2017's Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle. Sony wisely played it safe, only spending $90 million on the film and making sure Jumanji was front and center in the film's marketing. That, and plastering the star's mugs all over the marketing, most notably that of Johnson. It turned out to be a good strategy. Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle opened relatively small to just $36 million, but it legged it out to an incredible $404 million domestically and $961 million worldwide, for an estimated $781 million profit. Yup, somehow, someway, the Jumanji series went from a has-been to a nearly $1 billion franchise. This makes it not only one of Johnson's biggest hits, but the biggest franchise transformation ever. By 2006, Dwayne Johnson's movie star career was off to a rocky start. Actually, it was straight up terrible. The Rundown, Walking Tall, and Doom had each bombed, demonstrating moviegoers weren't looking for the next Schwarzenegger. And even if they were, it wasn't Johnson. So what's a would-be macho one-man army movie star supposed to do? Give the audience the feels. Enter 2006's Gridiron Gang, a based-on-a-true-story drama in which Johnson plays a probation officer and counselor at a juvenile detention center who teaches the inmates responsibility by forming a football team. If it feels like you've seen this movie before, critics agreed, panning it as cliché with a 42% score, and audiences stayed away. Gridiron Gang earned $41 million worldwide. Even with a modest $30 million budget, it lost about $19 million. The only silver lining is that it allowed Johnson to demonstrate actual acting ability, which might have helped him get another chance. The original 1995 Jumanji was a solid hit for Robin Williams, but when the studio tried to turn it into a franchise a decade later with 2005's Zathura, they made the mistake of not bringing back Williams. As a result, the movie was a flop. So after the success of 2017's Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle, the studio had learned its lesson, bringing back Johnson and his co-stars to recapture the magic. It worked. 2019's Jumanji: The Next Level was another smash hit, earning $316 million domestically and $800 million worldwide.
All right, bring it on.
Thanks to its modest $125 million budget, it's estimated that Jumanji: The Next Level earned around $550 million. That's some serious bank. Dwayne Johnson's movie career was in a weird place in 2010. He'd headlined several action movie bombs, but found his new niche starring in badass and a kids movie films like The Game Plan and Tooth Fairy. Alas, those brought to mind Hulk Hogan's failed big screen career, such as the dreadful Mr. Nanny. Sure, they made a little money, but is that really the direction anyone would want to take their career? Certainly not Johnson, who tried again to headline an action flick in 2010's Faster. With a very modest $24 million budget, Faster seemed sure to make money, if only because it was so cheap to produce. Yeah, so much for that. Faster tanked out of the gate and ran out of gas fast, earning $23 million domestically and $35 million worldwide. Despite its bargain budget, Faster still reportedly lost about $13 million. Back to kiddie movie hell for Johnson? Not quite. He followed this up with 2011's Fast 5, which more than doubled the worldwide gross of Faster in its opening weekend alone. Johnson's action movie career didn't need to go faster, it just needed to go faster and furious, sir. Few franchises have followed a more interesting trajectory than the Fast and the Furious. The series started strong in 2001, hit the skids, then roared back not only bigger than before, but much bigger. And much of that can be chalked up to the addition of Johnson, who changed the franchise forever with 2011's Fast 5. But that wasn't the biggest hit in the franchise. The series' high watermark came with 2015's Furious 7. You could tell this film was meant for big things when it opened to $147 million domestically, a $50 million bump from the $97 million opening of Fast and Furious 6. Furious 7 wasn't done smashing franchise records, earning $353 million domestically on its way to an incredible $1.5 billion worldwide, nearly doubling the $789 million worldwide gross of Fast and Furious 6. Furious 7 became one of the top 10 highest-grossing films ever. With a $190 million budget, Furious 7 earned Universal a profit of around $1.12 billion. Furious 7 is unequivocally Johnson's biggest hit, handily topping the $781 million profit of Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle and $1.2 billion gross of Fate of the Furious. Not bad for a pro wrestler turned actor, right? There are bombs, there are mega bombs, and then there's Southland Tales. It's appropriate the film is about a potential nuclear annihilation, as that pretty much was the scale of this disaster. Strangely, Southland Tales seemed like it might be just what Johnson's career needed in 2007 following a string of failures. Most of Johnson's mid-2000 oeuvre was straight to DVD quality. So starring in critical darling Richard Kelly's highly anticipated follow-up to Donnie Darko was probably meant to give him indie cred. So much for that. While Southland Tales has recently received something of a critical reappraisal, at the time, few viewers liked it, as its 39% critic score and 41% audience score demonstrated. Even worse was its box office gross. Ready for this? Southland Tales made $364,607,000 worldwide. Yep, probably less than what a Luke Hobbs movie makes on a Tuesday afternoon. For the Fast and the Furious franchise's 8th installment, the series did what nobody could have possibly predicted. It broke up the family, and Vin Diesel's Dominic Dom Toretto was the one to do it. Say what? Honestly, by this point, the franchise could have done just about anything and still would have made boatloads of money. But just for the sake of thoroughness, here's the deets. After Dom fell into the seductive clutches of Charlize Theron's diabolical cipher, there was only one man who could bring the family together to take on their former leader, Dwayne Johnson. By this point, Johnson was almost as much a part of this franchise as Diesel, as despite the large ensemble, they were the only two featured on the teaser poster, with the provocative "Family No More" tagline. That was enough. The Fate of the Furious opened to $98 million and wound up bringing home $225 million domestically and $1.2 billion worldwide. With a blockbuster-sized $250 million budget, The Fate of the Furious still hauled in about $700 million in profit. At this point, it seems fair to say that Johnson has probably left the bombs behind for good. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more Looper videos about your favorite stars are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.